Welcome to the show, Gearheads. We just watched the Formula One season finale at Abu Dhabi. This is John Massengill sitting in studio with Les Kaiser. Jonathan Green is not in studio tonight. This morning, I should say.
Oh, no! Mayhem!
And yes, we've heard mayhem a few times this year with Jonathan not being in studio, but we have a guest in studio. We have former Haas F1 team manager Dave O'Neill. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, we just watched the season finale. Lewis Hamilton wins, start to finish, pole position, and wraps up his season with his 11th win. And he also got fastest lap. And I believe that that is his 6th fastest lap of the season as well. So I'm loving this new website that I found. I say new. I've found it before, statsf1.com. It's great. But yeah, it was not the most exciting race, but there was a little bit of action going on, and good to see some of the teams. Carlos Sainz looking good, coming in and wrapping up his race, and Hulkenberg wrapping up his potentially F1 career. But he got driver of the day, guys. Hulkenberg did. I think that was just a fan favorite.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I do think Bottas earned it from last all the way up into the front pack.
Yeah, yep. You said something a minute ago. I wish, and you were right. You said, I wish they'd have covered his ascent to the top a little more. We didn't get to see as much of that as I'd hoped.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, Bottas ended up 4th. Let me just run down the grid. Lewis Hamilton wins the race. Verstappen comes in second with all kinds of engine conversations on the team radios about different modes all up and down the numbers, modes 1 through 8 or whatever. But Charles Leclerc 3rd, Valtteri Bottas 4th, Sebastian Vettel 5th, Albon, Perez, Norris, Kvyat, and Carlos Sainz in 10th. Daniel Ricciardo just outside the points in 11th. Then Nico Hulkenberg, Kimi Räikkönen, Kevin Magnussen, Grosjean, the Haas boys at 14 and 15. And Giovinazzi, Russell, Gasly, Kubica, and Stroll, who did not finish the race after some damage. Yeah, Dave, our Haas team did exactly what you see them do every race this season. Magnussen was competitive. He got up to like 7th, 8th place? I think it was 8th. I think he got up to 8th. Yeah. And then just as the tire issue that they've had all year long just started creeping in, and they just kept dropping and dropping and dropping.
Yep. I guess as predicted, I think they'll be glad to see this one out and start again. I think they've probably got some valuable data from, it seems pointless going around, but the information you gather from these races is really important, vital to next year's car and how they tackle the problems. So, also good for the team. They do the pit stops, so they learn more about that side of things. And again, you have to run around to gather data, so it's a worthwhile exercise.
They'll take it, right? They'll take any. I mean, it's all the F1 teams. It's only been in the last few years where we've seen the drop in testing. I mean, how many years ago was it where you got a significant amount of additional testing throughout the season, and even off season?
Yeah, in season. I mean, they still do some of the tyre testing for Pirelli, which is split between the teams, but. Yeah, probably 10, 12 years ago, you were testing after each Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So, plenty of testing.
So
I'm really curious, though. You mentioned the tire testing, and we've heard, from the Haas guys talking about how they're struggling with temperature and how to do this. I feel like it's going to be mostly aerodynamic driven and not be able to keep your temperatures up. What else is involved in it?
In the actual tyre test, that's normally a Pirelli tyre test, so they give you the stipulated setup. So you have to run this camber and this toe and this wing level, and then the tyre compounds that they give you are, for next year or further down the season. So you can't really change anything, and all the data is shared between the teams on that side. So it is literally a tyre test. It's not a mechanical test for the team.
I almost wonder why they don't just have their own cars and let's just
Well, they did.
Pirelli run their own cars, period.
They did try it, and then the once they worked out all the expense of having the, who was going to give them power unit, who was going to gain the advantage from giving them, because everyone wanted to give them the power unit to test. So once you started looking into that, and then whose gearbox would you run, what chassis, etc., it worked into I don't know, millions and millions before you could get a test mule, and then obviously each race the cars get updated. So the test car, the Pirelli car, if you like,
becomes a maintenance item.
Exactly. So they just figured it would be best to share the costs between the teams, and also just share the testing roles, which they tend to do. One or 2 days each. That's it.
Well, so after the race, normally, I mean, not even after the race, in the middle of the race, F1 teams normally start packing up and getting ready for the next race and getting hurried and talking about and strategizing for the next race. But what about this right now, Dave? What about the end of the season? They just finished up. Is there some relaxation in Formula One at this point now? Are they celebrating a little bit, even up and down the grid, even if they didn't win?
I think there's it's a sense of relief. The season's over with. It's non-stop, from winter testing, or even before that when the car build starts. So they will go off and have their holidays or their days they haven't taken off during the year. But they'll be getting ready for testing. There's a couple of days testing after this race, so not too much will be packed down. They'll go back, and of course they'll have to get back to the correct clocks, because the testing will start at 9 o'clock in the morning, as opposed to when they finish here. But there'll be an awful lot packed up. There'll be more people on the bigger teams that will fly out to train new engineers that have been at the factory. It's a good time to blood people without having the pressure of a race weekend. And of course, you've got the race environment still. The garages are all set up like you would have racing, etc. It's a good time for sponsors. Quiet time to bring sponsors out and give them the experience with the testing. And then, of course, you've got the new drivers that will be going into the cars as well. To put them into the system. So quite a lot happens after the race.
Well, in a little bit, I want to hear more of what goes on from this point until the beginning of the new season.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we're excited to have someone who's been there, done that, want to hear about that. And I mean, so it's such a brutal schedule, right? First of all, I mean, we forget that it's the sport we love, and we all get up early in the morning and all that. But I mean, these guys travel all over the world, and it's just an insane schedule, hard on families and hard on everything else. But this time between now and March, generally, what all goes on?
So sort of a brief overview would be something like the testings. I can talk for the smaller teams. The bigger teams, they tend to have more people that can come in and more resource back at the factory. So, that's a given, and that's what you're up against. But if you talk about the midfield side of things, so we'll do the testing. Someone like Haas doesn't have another 20 or 30 people flown in for the test. So it is the race team effectively doing that. Maybe one or two more would come in. So you do the test, you'd pack up. We're in on the 1st of December now. So all the freight would be back, the beginning of next week. So, like 7th of December, everything will be unloaded. And then by the 1st of January, the sea freight for Australia will need to be floating off to Australia. So you have to think of things like colours, sponsor changes, etc. Because all the garage boarding, as we were talking about earlier, all that, if you have new sponsors, old sponsors coming on or off, all that has to be decided before the 1st of January.
Well, see, Haas got a head start on that because they got to get rid of all of the sponsorship, the logos halfway through the season.
Oops, you had to go there.
I couldn't. When I hear F1 sponsorship, I had to go there. They've still got that Twitter account going for Rich Energy and talking like they're the greatest energy drink ever, and I've still never seen a can of it, at least not here in the United States. But
Yeah.
hey, by the way, if you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-5483. Call us up. Tell us what you think. Ask Dave a question. We got a rare moment to talk to someone who's been inside F1. Feel free to give us a call and tell us what you think. But yeah, Dave, you were talking through some of the what goes on and some of the big team versus the small team. I bet that is a pretty dramatic difference of what goes on in the big team versus small.
Yep. But that's the way it is. So you just got to kind of get on with those side of things. And of course, you only bite off what you can chew on those sides. Also, we don't have to get involved in the engine builds and all the other parts that are bought off the shelf.
Yeah.
Effectively. But yeah, going back to the winter break, as they will refer to it as, the freight and the sea freight will be getting ready for the first race. The guys and girls will have their holidays or vacations that are owed to them over the winter, so they tend to come back in the first or second week of January, and then the onslaught starts again. So it'll be preparation for the car build, which generally takes about a week, but is spread over 3. The time the bits come in, and the car's built, and then preparation for in factory pit stop practice. So people get acclimatized before the start of the race, because you've got a 3 or 4 month gap before they start doing their 2 or 2.5 second stops under pressure again. So there's a lot of practice. Then there's some of the teams have got training regimes in boot camps for the guys and girls that are on the team to go away to, which have to be done. And then of course the winter testing starts again. And then the merry-go-round.
It all starts over
again. Yeah. So there isn't really any downtime per se. Just the holidays that are owed, and then it keeps going. But the factory staff again, are behind the scenes making things work for the race team. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that oil all the gears while the team are away.
Well, when did they start actually making the parts for the 2020 car, for instance?
Somewhere around the August time of the season. They make the bigger bits, maybe like the plank, some of the skids, etc. But the bigger stuff, like where the engine's going to sit, and where the engine's going to bolt to the gearbox, all that sort of stuff is done probably, April, May time.
Okay.
So they're definitely 10 months ahead of everything.
Well, now we're looking towards quite a collection of changes for 2021. To me, that is such a drastic change that we'd probably, how early can they start looking at 21 designs?
They've been looking at them for as they go into the meetings. This is what the teams will be doing. They'll be reporting back to the drawing office and saying, we could be going off on this. We've got 2 front wings now, or another element on the rear wing, and so everything that's been talked about, they'll then model, simulate, so they are ahead of the game. So
Gotcha.
they're doing it now. They're spending fortunes on it now, and like I think I said last time, I personally believe the gap will be a pretty similar gap to how it is now.
Well, what about the wind tunnel testing? At what point do they start counting the hours or the limits of wind tunnel testing? Does it include individual components, or does it include the profile of the car? Is when they start accounting for that?
It's they call it on wind time, so it's when the fan starts spinning. Is when it's ready. So what happens on that side to gain the quick changes is they maybe have 2 or 3 models as opposed to 1 model. So if you were changing a front wing, you'd have three models with 3 different front wings you were testing. So you can lift one car out and put the other car in, and that's the way to take full advantage of the on wind time. So.
All right, guys. Well, hey, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes going through the highlights of today's race. Actually, that's a joke. We're going to, because it won't take that long. I have some notes from today's race that I do want to talk about, but we got lots more to discuss, and we're going to wrap up the season. So stick with us through the break. Listen to Speed City live from Austin, Texas. Back after these.
Hi guys, this is Pierre Gasly and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Yeah, that was Pierre Gasly, and we got to spend a bunch of time with Pierre Gasly and Daniel Kvyat at NASA. Man, that was so cool, and we got to know those guys really well. I warmed up to both those guys, and Daniel Kvyat really was interesting too because he got to meet some Russian astronauts, cosmonauts, I guess they call them, at NASA there. But hey, let's talk a little bit about today's race. In my notes, one of the exciting things to me was they started using a quick little stat at the start. I'd never seen them do this before. At least I don't know if you guys had seen it,
Right.
but I had never seen it. But they showed the driver with the fastest start, and they did it in like a 0 to 60 kind of thing. They did 0 to 200 kilometers, and that was Sebastian Vettel at 4.4 seconds. So you think about 4.4 seconds to what, 120, what's that, 124 miles an hour? So that's pretty fast.
Yeah.
4.4 seconds to 124.
Do they give reaction time? I'm thinking
Yeah.
drag strip now.
Yeah, no, yeah, like drag racing lights, but no, but that's the first time I've ever seen that. I thought that was cool, but highlights in the race. I mean, I'm trying to think what else was in there. I have in my notes where the engineer to Max was saying, "Calm down, Max, and refocus." And I said to Dave here in the studio, I said, "What do you think Kimi Räikkönen would have said to that?" And I think his reaction was, "They wouldn't have said that to Kimi Räikkönen. They wouldn't have said that. Shut up! I know what I'm doing." Let's see what else.
There was a kind of a midfield battle there with Norris. He got beat up on the last couple of laps. Lost out there. Kvyat, he had a good race, I guess.
Yeah,
You know, from the midfield, but
Finishing ninth, yeah.
Finishing ninth, yeah. I mean, the disappointing thing, I guess, for all of us sitting here not knowing what's happening inside is what's going to happen to Leclerc with this sort of pending investigation.
That's true.
And
before and after. So.
Yeah.
So, I'm still in a quandary. Why does it matter? Admittedly, there might be a little bit of benefit not carrying a full load of fuel from a weight perspective. But my understanding was that things were pretty strict on the 105 being what it took to finish a race. And so I'm kind of like that. That seems like it would be self-regulating, but there's a reporting aspect, which is what he was caught out on.
Yeah.
Well, but so you were explaining this, Dave, and we'll let you explain it again in a minute. But the idea is they weigh the car and they say, okay, you have too much fuel. Why are we waiting hours and hours? We know what happened. We know the infraction. Are they going to go do some further investigation, I guess? Because that's the frustrating part. If there's a plausible explanation on why they're waiting, okay, fine. But if they know that it happened, just like all these race incidents where we find out 3, 4, 5 hours later who actually won the race or who actually was on the podium, that's the frustrating part that we've complained about many times over the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Going into, and especially for the driver, he's going into the race knowing that he's under investigation. Is definitely got to be on the back of his mind. But yeah, I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but the only interpretation I can get from it is the volume or the mass that was given to the FIA, which they declared, whether it was 104.2 litres or kilos, whatever they gave. So whether there was, a documenting issue, and when it was reported, and then also when they weighed the car to see how much fuel was in it, whether it fell over there. So quite clearly it says in the technical regs what's required, but no one has explained to us who are listening from the outside where it's fallen over. They're just in a breach of the rule. So I don't know. I guess we just have to wait and see if there's any good Twitter feeds out there that can.
Yeah, so far I'm not seeing anything.
I know, and that's the frustrating part is that in the ones that happened during the race, in my mind, there's zero excuse.
Yep.
You saw what happened. Let's say we give you 5 minutes, or some amount of time, but not hours after the race on those kind. This is maybe a little different. Maybe they actually have to inspect the car afterwards.
Well, I think they will, because the cars are scrutinized and picked to do so after the race. But a lot can happen from being in the garage to going to the grid. I mean, the FIA have cameras in the garage, so the teams are watched at all times from Wednesday on when the cameras are switched on. So it could have been human error as well. Could have been a genuine mistake. Someone
just handwriting,
or sent an email to the FIA with the documented fuel load or mass, whatever, which way they did it. But I don't think it was intentional. But rules are rules. And there's a lot at stake for a point in this game.
But that's interesting. There's cameras in all the garages, and they're watching. So after the race, so you can't go and try to fix a problem that was that violated a rule or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the cameras are there for a couple of reasons. Safety would be one thing, making sure that no one's in the garage when the garages are closed for
the curfew,
Ferme and
I heard them say curfews
as well. Yep.
While they were here.
Yep. So that's one thing, and then the other thing is, if there is any, I guess, funny business, you can rewind it and check. We also used to use it for, if someone has made a mistake,
training.
We had cameras up as well, but that I think they have a couple there. But you can rewind them and see whether someone did make a mistake, whether it was genuine, how a fire maybe started in the garage, or someone tripped over or got run over. There's loads of different areas you can look in on it. So They have the means. They also, during the race weekend, they have a scrutineer for each car that stands in the garage, and he monitors everything, writes everything down. So you've got the camera, you've got an FIA scrutineer delegate, which will be in the garage. So I think you'll probably find it was it was a human error, but unintentional. But again, we'll have to wait
Yeah.
and see whether they get penalised for it.
Yes, once again, we will have to be waiting. Yeah. But yeah, there wasn't a ton in this race. And I mean, one of the big stories, of course, was DRS not working until lap 18. Yeah. So we got a little taste of what current F1 is like without DRS, and the way the cars are designed and everything. That's not good racing for us right now.
Sure, and realize that what's different about this is there is still dirty air behind the car, and so that was a big part of the drive towards DRS, is to make it so that the cars would essentially have a little boost when they were within 1 second of the car in front of them. That's where they can open the flap, be a little more airstream, and zip through that dirty air, get past it.
Yeah. One thing I definitely want to talk about on this final post-race show of the season, of course, our regular show, we do Speed City every Sunday night live in Austin on local radio. You can also stream it. We do that. We're going to continue on through the off season, and we're going to try to have some cool guests during that too, because before you know it, we're going to have racing here, big time racing here at COTA here in Austin, but early part of the next year. So,
hey, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the area.
Yeah. So, but one thing I want to talk about is the 2021. We're going to talk about the 2020 grid and the calendar next year, because it's record-breaking 22 races. But kind of on the same vein we've been talking about, I want to talk about the rules of 2021 and what's going to be different, and how that's going to affect the racing, because really that's the bottom line here, is that today, without DRS, we saw what happens. It's really, really poor racing, potentially, not always, but potentially without DRS and without some of these new rule changes. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And in fact, I think that I want to play this clip, because we got one more clip from Chase Carey, because we had an exclusive interview with Chase Carey, CEO, I believe an executive chairman of Formula One, when he was here in Austin. It was pretty cool to get our own interview with him. And we have a clip on his take. They had just announced the 2021 rules right after the press conference when we had this interview. So let's hear that.
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited. I mean, we've been working on this for a while, it's been a work in process for, realistically, probably a couple of years. So it's nice to get this step. Obviously, we got a lot of work left to do. We got to now make it happen. And these rules are not, like we're done. So it's an ongoing process, but these are a very important step. And I think really the foundation for us, enabling us to make the sport everything we want it to be in terms of competition, action on the track, and a much healthier sport for everybody.
One of the questions I asked in the press conference was, technology fans, do we have anything to worry about? Because we love the fact that F1 is the pinnacle. It's the most advanced kind of racing there is. Do we have any concerns there?
No, and I think that's why we tried to address it right up front, that I think the DNA of Formula One, is critical, to its future. I mean, this is a great sport with a great history. Great heroes, great events, and we want to build on that. We don't want to change it. We want to build on it. And part of that is making sure we continue to have a sport that is first a great sport with great competition on the track, but is a sport married to technology. And it is what distinguishes the sport from almost every other sport out there, and I think part of what makes it truly unique.
Well, we will be excited to hear all about that. And we have Dave O'Neill in studio. And Dave, I want to talk to you. Let's go ahead and take our break. But when we come back, I want to talk to you about some of the things that are banned in going 2021, like hydraulic suspension and barge boards and some other things. And we have a caller on the line, so we're going to get to that caller right after the break. Let's go ahead and get that break. Listen to Speed City live in Austin, Texas. Back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Dave, your old boss, bringing us back from the break. How was Gene Haas to work for? I know Gunther was your day-to-day, but...
Yeah, Gene, very quiet guy, unassuming. He was a thinker, I guess, is the best way to put it. A thinker that did an awful lot behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean, his machine tool business is massive and growing.
Yeah.
And from where he started, he's come a long way. But
yeah,
genius, I'd say, probably.
That's good to hear. All right, we have a caller on the line. By the way, if you want to call and join the show, 512-643-5483. We got a regular on the phone, Andy P. Hey, Andy, how's it going, man?
Good morning, guys. How is it now that this 2019 marathon season is over?
I know it's weird to me. In some ways it seems like it just started to me. And Andy, I was thinking about you yesterday. I tweeted out from our account and I said, on Thanksgiving Day actually, and I said I was thankful for all the new fans and friends that we've gotten this year, and I just want to say I appreciate you tuning in and interacting with us all year long on social, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely not a problem. And thanks to you guys as well, for doing the show. It's yeoman's work sometimes getting up at the odd hours that you guys do to bring great content. Yeah, exactly. I mean, to bring great content every week is really tough to do. So kudos to you guys for doing that.
Hey, well, thanks for taking the trek to Texas. It was great getting to meet you, and thanks for being a part of the Speed City events race week.
Oh, very happy to do it. And like I said before, thanks to you guys for putting that on. One of the things there really wasn't much to say about today's race.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that, the DRS didn't work for a quarter of it, and you really got to see why, at least on that track, why it's really needed. But just kind of an overall observation, and I'm glad you guys brought up, the Texas race week. Something that I noticed, and I haven't really had a chance to make this point anywhere else yet, just in interacting with everybody during that week, what you guys have been saying about, getting more Americans involved, it's happening because I've been fortunate enough to go down to Texas every year that they've had the race there. The first year, I would say 1 in 4 fans was not American that I would run into. I would say this year it's closer to 1 in 5, 1 in 6. So the percentage of Americans that are going to the race in Texas and are coming to Austin is definitely increasing. And you've seen it in the numbers. You've seen it in the numbers on social. So it's happening. It's good. It's still got a ways to go, obviously, but this sport is actually, I think, finally starting to take root in this country, and it's really fun to see.
You know what? There's lots of numbers to back that up too, Andy, because the ESPN numbers are up this year significantly. You mentioned social media. It's hard to judge that a little bit because F1's accounts are still new because Bernie didn't believe in it. But F1 was the number 1 major sport social media growth in the last 2 or 3 years. And anecdotally here in Austin, we've seen it. Andy, it wasn't that long ago. You would go to people, you go to a restaurant. When I go to a restaurant, I would always interact with either the waitress or whoever and ask them about the racetrack. Some of them would say, they didn't even know it was there. And that doesn't happen anymore. People understand it now. Austin has embraced it at least.
So, Andy, I know you're a great ambassador of Formula One fanaticism. What more does it need? Mario Andretti talked about, hey, we need the American team, the facility, the driver, to build the audience. Well, we've got those kind of rolling, but when you get somebody hooked in talking with you about F1 and learning from you, what is it that you think is hooking in that new follower?
I would hope that it's the passion that the fandom has for the sport. And that's kind of how I got involved with it was, you'd see these other people talking about it and you go, boy, why are they getting into this? And to me, one of the linchpins was a documentary. It was called, I think, ironically enough, One, all about like the safety features and everything. And if you watch the last 5-10 minutes of that documentary, it's all about like race celebrations and everything like that. So anything that can garner that type of response from teams and fans ought to be something you ought to look into, because I think that's just missing from a lot of sports today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And less to when you're saying, to me, there's so many facets to F1, because for me, the number one thing is the technology. I love automotive technology, racing technology, right? But for some, they could care less. It's the racing, it's the competition. And for some, that it's they go to the places they go. They go to, like today, here we are at Abu Dhabi and all the cool countries that you go to, the culture and all. There's so many different facets to it that I think that people could get excited about. And I think people do. Different people watch it for different reasons. That just in my little sphere they do. But Andy,
right. I mean, you can pick an angle. You can look at it from a business perspective. You can look at it from an athletic perspective. You can look at it from a technology perspective, and it's all wrapped up into one, really, in my opinion, really cool sport.
Yeah, and I think that all those things. Andy, what I was about to ask you is, we're thinking about 2020. What are your expectations for next year? Any revelations? This year the revelations were your team, the McLaren team, just did so well. The Haas team did so poorly, and not a whole lot of There's been some driver things that we didn't think about. But what about for next year? Any predictions? Any guesses?
I would say don't sleep on Racing Point, because I think that is a team that is finally now going to have its budget under it. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they can now develop, because I think they were just coming out of a survival mode, and now that they can actually try to plan their stuff out, it's going to be interesting. And I want to see what the response from Haas is. Mm-hmm. They clearly have identified what the problem is. Now we got to find out what their solution is, and you hope that they can take a step forward and get back into the fight.
We have a gentleman who we can ask if So Dave, if you're back in the chair at Haas, what do you do right now to try to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, and I think they have been doing is the answer. They've been at it since they've established what is the Achilles heel to their problem during the year. And they've been trying stuff as well. You've seen the car go quickly in the start of the race and then drop off. So there's a lot of areas I think they're clarifying. Bit of testing as well. This coming week to find out which direction they should be going in. But I think they'll come back strong. They started out well. All teams have blips. Look at Williams. They got more world championships than everyone stuck together from the first three. So they'll come back.
Yeah.
But I think Haas, they have to. It's something they do, and everyone does is fight again. McLaren, yep. And they have to look at them 2 years ago and see what state they were in, and they're up scoring points with both cars now. So, I think Racing Point will, now with the budget, you should see some results. Maybe not next year, but the following year. They're doing an awful lot of stuff as well. They're building a factory 3 times the size of what they got now. So they're also employing lots of new staff. That's not a work of a moment. It takes a while to get people to work together on that side. So, be surprised to see them do a lot better than they have done this year, but maybe 2 or 3 years down the road they'll be punching above their weight, I think.
So where do you think Racing Point will put their budget for 2020?
I think they're going to put it into what they have been doing previously, which is aero and more aero as they can. Also, on the other hand, you've got 2 drivers that I think, there's half a second difference between them. So the data there's a lot of data to look at and also clear out from Stroll's to Perez's. Perez is obviously more consistent on that side.
Right.
So they have a disadvantage on that side with the half a second gap between the two drivers. So they have to get themselves back in line on that perspective.
Well, that's a good point, Andy, and we'll be that's definitely one to watch. So, Andy, thanks a lot, buddy. We appreciate you listening. Appreciate you calling in, and give us a call on the regular show on Sunday nights too.
Yeah, maybe. Thanks again, guys, and it's been great talking to you.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Haas team, and when we spoke to everybody here, no one had a defeated attitude at all. Everyone was like, you know what? This is just part of the process. We hit a bump where we're going to work to fight another day. And in fact, we do have a clip. I've got a clip from Kevin Magnussen where he talks specifically about 2020, and he seemed pretty optimistic. We got that one ready, producer? Yep, let's hear from Kevin Magnussen.
I'm very much looking forward to next year. I think it's a chance to start on a fresh again and a clean sheet of paper, and we know we can do it. We did it last year. We were very competitive last year. Had a lot of bad luck and yet scored a P5 position in the Constructors' Championship. And some teams never done that on the grid. Toro Rosso, for example, never finished fifth. They've never finished as high as that. So, we did that in the third year of the history of the team. So pretty impressive, and people and even ourselves seem to forget that sometimes, how good we were last year. So we've got to keep confidence in ourselves and continue to believe in ourselves and just go and do it next year.
I love that. That was pretty optimistic attitude, wasn't it, from Magnussen?
Yep.
Yeah. Talking about things that nobody else had done, he said the P5 last year. So we'll see what they can do. I saw, I was thinking about something. We were talking about all the potential for next year, and we were talking about Ferrari earlier. Think about where Ferrari started this year. A rookie driver, I say a rookie, an inexperienced driver, almost a rookie, and Vettel, and the way they progressed this year, all the ups and downs, Vettel being down, and at one point we're thinking, is Vettel, is he done? You could have argued that at some point in the season. They've gone through a roller coaster ride, so they'd be pretty good position next year. Let's don't forget that there's really that if a handful of things were to change, Ferrari could have easily been making this a real championship battle. So who knows, next year that could happen too. So there's so many. We all know how sport is year to year.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned something going into this segment, but we got to bump it to next segment. We've got to take one last break. But I want to talk about 2021 rules and some of the technical things that maybe you can give us some insight with. You're listening to Speed City. We're live in Austin, and we'll be back after these messages.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right. So when we went to break, we were going to talk about 2021 rules, and there's a lot to talk about. There's everything from the cost cap to the technical changes. The new car looks really cool. It's going to have lower profile tires. Welcome to the 80s with a lower profile. I mean, that's there's so many different things, but I do want to start with the one I'd mention because it's a ban on hydraulic suspension. And Dave, you were talking about how it's not just that, but it's the way the suspension's connected front to rear.
Yep, it's kind of like a link system, which again, you want the car to work to get together with each other front and back, and the only way you can really do that is connect it. So the development that goes into that costs an awful lot of money. I guess that's why they've picked one of that to go on the list, is try and get that under control, as opposed,
that sounds crazy complex.
Pretty complex. Moog valve software that's required for it, etc. And also a lot of rig testing as well to be done on the car. So it kind of links the front and rear. So when you're going around the corner, you have all four wheels contacted to the road as much as you can, as opposed to having the four dampers which work independently, and the car rolls and breaks traction. You have to lift off, therefore slowing down. So you'll see some more. I guess it's kind of a driver aid, if you like.
Yeah, that's what I was in my mind. I was excuse me. I was thinking of it. Excuse me, almost like active suspension.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it like that, and it's a driver aid, and of course the people that have got the more money can develop it faster and put it on the car quicker, and then you can go quicker. So that's what they're targeting, and I guess the money surrounding it is quite great. So
that's got to be one of the biggest things, that cost cap. They're talking 175 million, but that's not across everything too. That's in certain areas, and how are they going to police that?
I don't know. There must be a plan in place, and also, if everyone has signed up to it, they all have to adhere to it. They've joined it, and they have to adhere to the 175 million. Just like anything in life, I guess, once you write the rule, you try and break it. So
right,
yeah,
ways of getting in and out of it.
But isn't that's one of the things I love about Formula One, is that you say break it, but you find something that's within the rules that somebody hadn't thought of that gives you an advantage. That's not breaking the rules. It's just when they wrote the rule, they hadn't thought of that, or some way around it that's a legal way around it.
How you will use them.
Yeah.
How you use them, yes. Yeah.
Some of the things, and we asked Gunther, said, okay, as a manufacturer, constructor, at what point, it's hard to say, what's the value of making a can of soup? What did it cost you to make that can of soup? Well, if you're the one making it, it's much different if you don't have that technology of equipment. It doesn't take as long, or you don't have that brain power behind it.
Yeah.
All of that kind of thing. It all changes matters. And where do you count it as a manufacturing or a research versus just regular operations?
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting question, isn't it? Just to find out where you get involved and where the line is drawn, to stay in or stay out of of that side.
The other part was the powertrain. We asked about the powertrain. Okay, so how much of it is included in when you say you are getting it from Ferrari? What are you getting? Are you getting the ECM? Are you getting the tune with it? Or the data that goes along to drive? All those kinds of things were the things that we're asking, and he said, quite honestly, that's some of the most difficult part of it, is defining we bought the powertrain from you, but do we get the tune information and all of that kind of thing? It's oversimplified in description, but it becomes very detailed in splitting off where do you end that piece?
Yeah, I mean, quite blurry as well, and because it hasn't happened, it doesn't happen every day. It's once every 5-10 years it happens. The defining it, and also the amount of more parts that are involved in the process now has made the process greater. But yeah, the hardware is easy to define. There's a power unit and it's got a few pistons in it and nuts and bolts. But where do you get your software update? How many people do you need to run it? When do you get the fuel updates, oil, etc.? So
Yeah, and that was the other thing that, okay, Dave gets paid $1 million a day to do this. Les gets a taco instead. Who do how do you account for that difference in skill set and the wages that go with that?
Yeah, I mean that's the hard bit, isn't it? And whoever's supplying it has to have that documented somewhere.
And by the way, I want 2 tacos a day.
2 tacos, yeah.
And the cost cap is $175 million. And I talked about it, about not everything, but what that is, that's $175 million per year per team, and it applies to anything that covers on-track performance, but excludes marketing costs, the salary of the drivers, and any of the top 3 personnel of any team. And let's not forget the cost caps, which we in the NFL and the NBA, they're called salary caps because it's a different sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
In F1, it's all about on-track performance, right? With the things that cost that. But we're used to that in the NFL. You got, they've done a fantastic job in the NFL of making parity. Now it truly is on any given Sunday we don't know who's gonna win, and that is the one key thing that F1 is missing right now. Because, I mean, we saw the stats we're at the end of a decade, right? We've seen the stats of how many times. What were the stats of how many teams that have not been either Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull have won a race? Not very many times
Right.
in the entire decade, and that's what needs to be fixed. And these salary caps in stick and ball sports in the United States, they work, and they work very, very well, and it has solved that problem. I mean, and it's not easily comparable because they talk about salary caps and and quarterbacks or whatever can go to another team. But in essence, it's the same kind of thing, and I really do think that it will work. But it's going to be a little bit of uncharted territory. I don't know. Have we had cost caps ever in Formula One?
There was, yeah, probably 2010, around 2010 side.
I thought there was, yeah.
There was the caps, but some of the teams started making up, like different businesses to do the R&D testing, etc. But I think going back to your point earlier about the cost caps, totally agree. That's one thing to look at. But when you're still looking at 1,200 people at Mercedes to 350 at Haas or whatever, you still got an army of people more, and they can produce more. How they're going to reduce from 1,200 down to whatever the budget, states for the workers on the ground floor is the interesting bit for me. People like Haas, Racing Point, all the smaller teams that don't operate at the 175, they're around the 120, 150. They're the ones I think are going to be the surprise in being able to move quickly. It's a bit the bigger teams are a big ship with a small rudder, whereas the smaller teams can move quickly because that's what they're used to doing. They have a meeting, they get everyone in the front office and tell them we're going left today instead of right, and it happens. Whereas the bigger teams, they're all over the place. They're not necessarily all in the same building. So
I want one of these, and I want it to be Haas, but I want a small team to think of something that would make a significant change and give them the chance to win races. I mean, that would just change the sport overnight and be such a dramatic thing. I know that's a lightning in the bottle kind of thing.
We need another Brawn, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Brawn episode.
Exactly. That's the kind of thing that we want. And well, look, we're almost out of time, and I just want to kind of look back and reflect a little bit on the season, I think overall, I think the season's been really, really good. A great season, really. Ever since after France, everything was a really good racing all season long, and I think that that I feel like that Liberty's making some good decisions. I think these 2021 rules are moving in the right direction, and I think our sport has got some momentum here in the United States, and I think there's lots of things to be excited about looking ahead.
I agree. I think I'm interested to see what these rule changes are going to do in 21, but I want to see what's going to happen in 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to sort of gather the grid together for 20, and then maybe have a little bit of a level playing field for 2021. But
yeah. Well, Dave O'Neill, thank you so much for joining us in the studio, and look forward to hanging out with you more here in Austin. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in this year. And, of course, check out our regular Sunday night show and go to our website, speedcitybroadcast.com, and find out all about us and when you can listen. And we appreciate everyone who listened this year. And we'll talk to you soon.
Ciao, y'all.
Ciao. Have a good week.